All right, Steve, take it away.
Welcome to Mom's Basement, a podcast where we discuss video games, movies, and other nerd culture that shaped our lives. From deep inside Mom's basement, we dust off the old goodies that we feel deserve a spotlight in modern gaming and pop culture. So what are we talking about today, gentlemen?
Today, we are going to talk about the one, the only, finally, boom, Final Fantasy VII.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes, it's finally happened. We've got the boys back. All of us are back, and we're here today, and we're going to talk about the one, the only game itself. We're going to try to get through this without being a 5.5-hour podcast today. So let me do this really quick. Final Fantasy, if you don't know, it's a JRPG developed in 1997 by Square. It was produced basically for the PlayStation console at that time. The game story follows Cloud Strife, a mercenary who joins the eco-terrorist organization to stop world-controlling mega corporation from using the planet's life essence as an energy source. Fucking whoa! What a concept for 1997. He then sent Cloud and his allies into pursuit of Sephiroth, a superhuman who seeks to wound the planet. What a fucking synopsis!
With his giant Masamune sword.
I love it. That was my nickname back in high school. It wasn't. Anyway, so the second most important part of the podcast today is what are you drinking? So Steve, what do we got on the cup tonight?
Today I have a Sazerac, which is rye and absinthe. So
good. I'm gonna be hallucinating halfway through. It's gonna be good.
Just a little.
When we start talking about the cross-dressing section, Steve's gonna break out like a dress. It's like,
I mean, when you get into dark materia and clones of clones and 8 million clouds,
yeah,
you need a little bit of the green fairy to help.
You need a little bit of the green fairy. Pete, what are we drinking tonight?
Clarity.
Cold brew with cream.
With cream, thank you. Classic. And Danberg is what you would say as, how do you say it in English? Hung over today. So we're drinking water. We're drinking lots of water.
Where's your hair of the dog? Go get yourself a beer right now.
No. I had 2 days of alcohol in my system that I need to purge out. If I could sweat it out this morning, I would, but I can't. Maybe I'll pick up some by the end. But understand that there's already alcohol in this system. It's not, I'm not putting new in, but it's already there. Anyway, so we decided to do this game because it's Final Fantasy VII. This game was one of the, like, it's hard to explain how, like, influential this game was to me and to, I know, Steve and also Pete. This is the game that I think, I'll say it before even the summary is, I think we benchmark all RPGs and JRPGs off of FF7. It is our bread and butter of JRPG. So that's why we did it. We wanted to make sure that we had a kind of format set up for Mom's Basement before we tackled some games that we actually gave a shit about. So that's why we're here today and doing this. But I want everyone to make sure that you are sitting back, relaxing, and enjoy your own beverage as we get into it today on Mom's Basement. I forgot where. There it is. Okay, so
I need to know where you got that. Where you got that suit that has the half red top, like a Star Trek suit.
Walmart. Is it just Walmart?
Makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, just like a T-shirt from the neck, from like the shoulder blades up. Full tuxedo underneath.
Party on the top.
Yep.
Business on the bottom.
There it is. No, it's party on the upper, business in the middle, pantsless at the bottom. Welcome to Walmart.
That's right. I forgot we're not wearing pants.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. I didn't.
I'm sorry. Mom's
one
Basement.
job.
We dust off the goodies, deserve a spotlight in modern gaming and pop culture, all without wearing pants.
There it is. Okay, so let's get into this. So, let's start from the past. So, what do you guys remember about playing this game for the first time? We did it actually. It wasn't even on the PC. I think it wasn't even on the PlayStation. I think we got it for our PC because I remember playing with a numpad. If I'm not mistaken.
I got it on the PlayStation later, but you're right. I think it was PC first.
That was the one that I played the most as a kid.
I know from me, to give some context to our lovely viewers out there, we, the three of us, did not have a Super Nintendo. We were a Genesis family, so that was bought for us. So we kind of went straight from platformers into platformers. Like, can you think of all of the great RPGs that were out for the Sega Genesis? List them.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Shadowrun. So we really missed out on the SNES RPG boom with the Chrono Triggers, with the Final Fantasy VI, with all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But 7 was the first game that I remember everyone was talking about. I mean, I remember, like, I was lifeguarding when I was 14 or 15 when the game released in 97, and it was all people were talking about. And I went over to a couple of friends' houses and I sat and I watched it. And this is the game for me that got me into RPGs.
Yep, me too. I remember when it's same thing. I played it, and then I went to school, and people were like, "What games do you like?" And I was like, "Final Fantasy VII." Like, everyone would just answer at the same time. There are people that say FF6 is actually like the best of the games, but that was, again, it was a game that we never played until we had already played 7, so it was hard to like gauge a game that wasn't 7. And I have put, I would say, close to 1,000 hours in on this game over the time I've played it. I played the first playthrough on it. I had about 300 hours on the game that I played on the PC. Then I rebought it for like 3 or 4 times on PlayStation when I owned my own PlayStation. I rebought it for my PSP, which I brought over here when I moved. I have not bought the remake yet, but I'm planning on it soon. I just haven't had time to really sit down and get a PlayStation and play it. But no, this was the game for me too, and it was same thing. When I talked to my friends about it, we would just be talking about like, oh, how do you beat Emerald Weapon? And I was like, I can lay my controller down and beat Emerald Weapon because I have like everything geared and paired up like to an insane degree. And it was just the game. You're right. It was the JRPG that defined JRPGs. And I have yet to this day to find a game that I can play from start to finish multiple times that keeps giving like FF7 does to me. Pete, what do you remember about it?
So a lot of the same. Started on computer on that 4-disc fold-out thing.
Oh, it was 4
have
disc.
to, like,
Yeah, I thought it was 3.
I can't remember what it was.
One was an install disc,
was,
right?
Yeah, one was the install. Then it was 3 game discs. It was the first game I had played. It was probably right around the time I started playing computer games. So like I was playing that side by side with Monkey Island. But what I remember about it is everywhere I got stuck. So I would, as a kid, get so far, and then like I just couldn't beat the section, and then I'd put it down and then start a new game. Then I would finally get past that section, and it kept going and going and going until I eventually beat it. But it was one of those games where, as I just got better at games in general, I was able to actually beat this game and get further in it. And I can remember like all of the stopping points.
So speaking of the computer and the puzzles and just the way that you get engrossed in the game, I totally forgot about this. When I was 17, I went to Italy. We had a foreign exchange student who was living with us.
Yeah.
Shout out to Leo. Love you, brother. But we had a foreign exchange student who was living with us, and I had the opportunity to go and spend literally 2.5 weeks in Bolzano, Italy, northern Italy, surrounded by mountains, like teen drinking, sledding in the Alps, Venice. And I took fucking my laptop and spent about 70% of that trip playing Final Fantasy VII.
In northern Italy. That's what you did at 17. That's the greatest. I never knew that. That's amazing. Like, I went to Italy.
I totally forgot until
I played
now.
a lot of Final Fantasy VII, and then I drank a lot. That's about it, really.
Oh my god.
That's amazing. Holy shit. Congrats. You win. You
That's
win the FF7 game.
That's my Final
That's it.
Fantasy memory.
2.5 weeks in Italy. What'd you do? I played FF7 on my laptop. Barely went outside. It's great.
Up the mountains. Shit, there were mountains? No way.
So this game, I mean, we could just talk about the game as a concept itself, but I've broken down this week, so we don't just ramble forever, about some major relevance points of this game that I want to get each of your opinions on, and then we'll talk about kind of where it is now and where things are moving in the future. But so in this game, we talked about it a little bit, but where does it stand for you guys in the JRPG kind of family itself? So for me, this game, I know that there are games for FF6 and stuff like that, but the Final Fantasy series themselves aren't really like a continuous story. It's just like different stories themselves. So 7 isn't really connected to anything besides Chrono Trigger. Not Chrono Trigger, what is it? Crisis Core, I think. The Zack game. But that came out after. It was kind of like a sequel-ish, prequel-ish. I don't know exactly. I never really played it. But that's the only FF7 the only Final Fantasy game that really has sequel rather than like 10-2, which was
and 13-2.
And 13-2, yes, but it wasn't like as well received. But it's kind of just like this game that came out and it totally changed. There were games that were it wasn't for me. JRPG was a type of game that was like, okay, you can pick if you want to be like a big spellcaster, if you want to do this, if you want to do that, if you want to do, like summons on this player. It's all up to you. But the thing that really threw it out for me was the story itself, because there were JRPGs that were the time-based combat. So like everyone takes their turn. You have your action bar. When it fills up, you can take your turn. That was not new for Final Fantasy at all as a genre. But the story itself of how overarching and like the scope and like the size of that story was the first game I've played that had a story like that. That I was actually like, what is going on? So for me, it's like the story. It's the JRPG that starts the crazy stories that happen.
Well, and JRPGs. What I liked about 7 so much, building off of that, is like JRPG stories can be absolutely like preposterously ridiculous, like trying to follow what's happening in some of these stories of some of the games like Dragon Ages or I'm trying to think of any others. It's like it's so convoluted, it's so like you have no idea. Now I'm fighting a robot spider for some reason, but Final Fantasy VII, like you said, it was a cohesive narrative. It made sense. The story was presented in such a way that it just left right and around the corner, surprised you.
Yep. And it changed.
You know, I mean, like
it wasn't like we have a bad guy, we need to fight the bad guy. Like the whole purpose of the game was like there's this corporation that we don't like, and then as you go through, you're finding out more and more fucked up stuff about the corporation. You're like, oh, that's just the tip of this iceberg. Holy Christ! There's this more gigantic problem that no one knows about, Sephiroth and Genova, and like this just like crazy stuff that's going on, like clones and stuff. Yeah, like. Oh my God. So like as you get through the game, I'm getting chills. I'm literally getting chills talking about this. It's something that really hits me hard. But this game, it develops a story and it stays on point. Like every piece is connected to the next piece. And
it layers.
Yeah, and it's not like it's got some Tarantino-ish like, okay, you're going to jump back a little bit and hear this little backstory about Sephiroth and Niblim and everything like that. But it really it does it in a way that you're still like moving forward in a narrative rather than like jumping forward and backwards. Like you come up to a point, you're like, what is this? And then it jumps back and gives you that narrative until that point, which actually feeds some like cookies into the future, and then it pushes forward after that. So it's great. I love it. It's such a good thing. So Pete, where does this lay for you on the JRPG spectrum? You've probably played more JRPGs than me. I'm just like a 7 fanboy, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for me, it's the same thing. It's the benchmark. You know, I've played through 7, 8, 9, 10, 10-2, up 13, like a ton of different ones. I've even gone back and done the earlier ones. But for me, it was that. I mean, if you remember, Tactics was actually released, I think it was only a couple months later. And so I found myself, because I think we had both at the same time, I would do some Final Fantasy VII, some Tactics. And then I just found myself repeatedly going back to 7 because even though I couldn't beat it and I couldn't play it and I die consistently, I wanted to keep playing it because I wanted to see what happened in the story. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was like you get to that point and then Yuffie like steals all your materia and you're like, you bitch!
Yeah,
like I worked really hard to get all of that.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
Man.
Yeah. Totally.
And so like one of those things where it's like the challenge presented itself. And so for me, I actually like that I had a game that challenged me, but if I actually tried, I could beat it.
Yeah.
CV,
you know, I think,
go ahead.
Yeah, I thinking about like the presentation of the story too. I mean, Final Fantasy games have always been kind of notorious for having big chunks of the game that are on rails, right? And I mean, the typical, like, you know, I think about like 15. it's like you have this massive open world, and you have this way to kind of like explore and like drive around on rails.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the end of the game gets so focused and so narrow.
Yeah.
I was absolutely floored because Midgar was a game in itself. And that was the section of the game that was entirely rail based, where it moved, it progressed. You're going forward, and then suddenly, you rescue Aerith from the. We have to talk Aerith.
Oh my god. Okay, we'll do this.
but still, because there's like heated debates online. But you break out of the Shinra factory, and all of a sudden, it's now this massive world to explore, and it was overwhelming. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and you can.
It took me 40 minutes to find Calm.
Yeah, exactly. No, like there were playthroughs I did where I didn't get Yuffie and I didn't get Vincent because you didn't need them. They were completely out of the way, and that's open world. Like if you don't actually explore it, you can miss characters of a game, more than one. There are multiple characters of this game that you cannot get and finish the game completely fine. You lose out on story missions, you lose out on stuff like that, but yeah, it's done. So this is a good point. Steve made two points that I want to kind of push this discussion forward.
I make all good points.
you made two good points.
Absolutely blew you away.
Oh, vomit! No, it was the Aerith. And it was the
the offshoot was the great point.
Yeah, this rambling, and then there was one golden nugget.
I'm a doctor. What do you want?
Yeah, no, it's good.
That's what PhDs do. That's what PhDs do.
It's true. I should make PhD Steve on yours. I should. I'll do it for next time. Next time, comma. But no. So more than just the story itself, the character development was one of the things in this game that really took something to a new level, where I actually gave a shit about the main characters. And I know that even, Steve, I want to ask you in a little bit about the remake, because they have this whole new branch with Jessie, like that just never was in the original game itself, and Jessie has a lot of character progression in the new one. But like, I am an Eris, not a TH and S. That's how I say it, because that's how the Japanese is translated. There's no TH sound that exists in Japanese, so it wouldn't be Aerith. It'd be Eris. It just doesn't make. Pete, what's yours? Are you gonna get slothed? Tell me honestly.
Yeah, probably. So somewhere I read is that the initial writing of her name
Go ahead.
was supposed to be,
Go ahead.
the initial writing of her name was supposed to be a mix of air and earth, but then I've always heard that localization mistranslated it, and so it came out Eris when it should have been Aerith. So that's my takeaway.
All right, good. I'm glad we got that done. All right, fantastic. Thank you, Pete. All right, so it's Eris. We're going to refer to her as Eris for the rest of this podcast. Thank you.
That's fine.
But I want to talk about character progression. There were two big points for me that there's way more than that, but I'll give 2 points because I want to do the marketplace itself as a separate thing. But the two big parts of the game that really hit me as character develop were the Gold Saucer, the date that you could do at Gold Saucer, with depending on who you were actually using in your party and playing well with, you were able to bring them as a date.
Responding to.
Yeah, and responding to, you could bring them into a date and Gold Saucer, and it could even be Barrett. Like I had playthroughs where I brought Barrett as my date, and Cloud and Barrett had a nice date in Gold Saucer. But
very progressive of you.
But it made you give a shit about the characters themselves, like, because a lot of times that stuff is just cut and dry. Like Cloud has a romantic relationship with this person, or Cloud has a romantic relationship with that person, and you could decide if you wanted it to be Barrett or Tifa or Eris, and that was the whole. It was so cool. And then the other major point was when Eris dies, because I put lots of time into Eris. Spoilers. I put lots of time into Eris, and then when she died, I was like,
when did she come back?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wait a second.
When do I get my healer back?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what happened? So, like, these were points in the game where I actually gave a shit about the characters after a time, and they did such a good job, like, slowly building their relationships. And, like, at the beginning, Barrett and Cloud, like, absolutely are, at each other's throats, and it's just about money. But towards the end, they're, like, this group, this team, this Avalanche team. And it's really, I just love the whole progression of the whole thing itself. Those are the big points for me. Marketplace has some good Cloud progression. When Cloud goes insane towards middle of disc 2 after basically Eris dies, and Cloud goes like off his fucking rocker. There's a lot of good character progression with Tifa as well. But it's just like that was I haven't played a game that I actually cared about the characters before until FF7. Pete, what was your experience for character development in 7?
Yeah, so a lot of the same stuff. So 2 points for me. One is that I think no character was shorted. So even some of the side characters where it's like Yuffie, Vincent, Sid, Red 13. I remember going to Cosmo Canyon for the first time and I was like, oh, this is Red 13 section. Like this is all about him and his story.
Yeah.
But even after that, it's not just they get their moment like Bugenhagen. He comes back at the end after you find the key to the ancients. And so they're even bringing in like other secondary characters and developing them too.
What about Kate Sith?
So that was something I mean, it's Reeves, so it's not much you can really do with that.
I had to troll you. I apologize. You can keep going.
Who was that?
Kate Sith.
Okay, yeah.
He's like, he got all this great character progression. Yeah, exactly. Wait, there was a what?
What character?
A megaphone.
Well, he just comes back where it's like
Baymax.
Kate Sith gives his life. He comes back in the Temple of Ancients. It's like, I'm back again. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. It's anyway. Sorry. Continue. I had to troll you.
No, it's good. And then the other part that I really liked was it was one specific moment, but it's at the death of Eris.
Good.
Depending on the two characters you pick who are in your party, they react differently to her death. And so typically if you have someone like Vincent or Red 13 or Sid, they'll basically have a line and then they'll walk away. But the more I played it, the more I realized like the team of Final Fantasy VII to me has always been Cloud, Tifa, and Barret, because when Eris dies, Tifa actually has they added more like things that she would do. Like she would actually stand up, she would like hold her face, turn to Cloud, like do something, then run away.
Yeah.
And then Barret walks over and like puts his hand on Cloud's shoulder. Like they're the only two who actually touch Cloud during that sequence.
Oh, that's
and so even seeing all these other characters, like there are still the ones who you can tell like they've been in it from the beginning. Like they're still the ones who are closest
totally,
to
yeah.
Cloud.
Sid wouldn't really give that much of a shit about Eris dying. Like he kind of shows up very close to when she does die. Doesn't really know anyone. Kind of a standoff guy on his own. So it makes a good point. And again, I never really noticed that. It's very kind of a subtle thing for me. But you're right that it shows you, and you get these bonds between different characters and things like that. Even the side characters, except for Kate Sith. Steve, what's your opinion of the development?
Oh, to me, a story is as good as the antagonist or the villains. And I mean, you cannot get past Final Fantasy without talking about Sephiroth. You know, what's so interesting about his character and about his portrayal is you understand where he's coming from. It's like there's a good conversation to be had about, is Sephiroth actually a bad guy?
Well, Avalanche is eco-terrorists. Like they're,
right, I mean,
terrorists is in the actual name of the Avalanche group. Yeah.
Avalanche is an eco-terrorist, but Sephiroth's motivation is, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about purging the planet of this taint and basically like starting everything over. It's I'm going to summon Meteor.
Yeah.
I'm going to wipe everything out, and I'm going to start fresh because the planet is tainted. You know, it needs a purge.
Yeah.
On top of that, like you said, you have this major corporation. You have this mad scientist who's running experiments on
Hojo.
people. You have Hojo running running experiments on some of the characters like Red 13 and trying to get him, I think, to breed with Eris.
Yep.
Right, because Red 13 is in some way tied to the ancients and the ancient bloodline, and Eris being the last surviving ancient. So it's like you have this layer of really diabolical schemes that are coming from the villains that compel you to continue. And I think that the villains do a really nice job of standing out in their place of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I never thought about that. Like when I think of FF7, I think more of the protagonist side of it and like the Avalanche group and everything. But you're 100% correct. The antagonist side also are all very well developed, and I think that's what makes this game so compelling. Is that no matter who you're looking at this from their perspective, it gives a reason for it, and that's why Alien 2. Yeah. Aliens is my favorite movie of all time because every decision and everything that happens in that movie is based on something that there's a reason that's relatively believable in that movie.
Yeah.
And in FF7 also, it's I never thought about it until you just said it, but every character that I'm thinking about is like, why were they doing that? Oh, because of this. And is that right or wrong? It's up to your personal interpretation. But there is some driving motivation that you're like, I could kind of see that argument holding water.
You can see the line. You know, Sephiroth just wasn't a jerk or, you know, a nasty bastard. He, you know, it was his life experiences. It was what happened to him. It was learning about all of the stuff that Shinra was doing that caused him to go mad and to, you know,
just kill everything now. Just
kill everything.
It all. Yep. And that's I love it. I absolutely love it. It's great. The character development in this game, the story itself, fantastic. But there's other parts about this game too that hit me, and that is the soundtrack. Now, aside from being a fantastic story, fantastic character development, and everything like that, I listen to the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack just in my car on its own, and it doesn't really get old for me. And like there are remakes of it and remastered like metal versions of stuff, but the actual songs and the soundtrack of the game itself is still super impressive and amazing. And I just wanted to get your guys' kind of reaction or not reaction, your opinion about the soundtrack itself. But for me, I studied music for a long time. I was going to music to try to be professional with music for a long time, and I taught music for a while. And the soundtrack and the melodies and stuff that were designed by Nobu for this game are... I feel like every other Final Fantasy after this has taken pieces of Final Fantasy VII particularly. And I know that FF7 had stuff from F6 and F5 and 3 in their music interpretation as well, because Nobu has done all of the music for FFs until I think recently. But it's this iconic soundtrack, and it's the sound of Final Fantasy to me. And I can't talk about FF7 without talking about the soundtrack for it myself. Pete, I know you did a lot of music too. What's your opinion about it?
Yeah, I mean, Nobu, who's literally done all of the Final Fantasies, I've seen interviews with him where even he talks about, like, I just wanted to do something different. Because Final Fantasy VII was pushing the fold with so much just in its development, he was like, I want to do something else. And so hearing the songs, I mean, you walk into an area and it's like he nailed it. Like Icicle Inn, it sounds like you're in winter. When you go to the Wall Market, it sounds like Wall Market. But he just does such a good job giving the moments of the game their soundtrack. The two most memorable for me, one is the Chocobo theme. So that just being like such an iconic song.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And then the other one would be Aerith's theme. Eris's theme. Sorry.
Slotham. Put it up. He lost all credibility.
Yep.
Sloth.
It's all right. Anyway, so with Eris's theme, he would always do it so tastefully where it's like when she gets killed and you get this Genova creature coming towards you, her theme keeps playing through the boss fight. And it makes that like just like holy crap. But then you get freaking One-Winged Angel, which is one of like the most iconic boss themes ever. Like when you hear that song, it's just like bam, bam, and it's like this is a boss fight. Which, fun fact, I know you'll appreciate this. He was actually inspired by Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, is what he took a lot of inspiration from to write One-Winged Angel.
Oh, I can see that actually. I have to listen to that again today. But I didn't think about it until now. But there are some. I can see that now. Actually, I didn't know that. Thank you, Pete. This is. I'm glad that you took that in that direction. I couldn't have put it into better words. You did a very good job at that. Thank you. The music for myself. It's just in my brain. I can't get away from it. But you did a very good job sorting it out. I could not have done that this morning. Thank you for that, Pete. But Steve, what is your
It's The Hangover.
Yeah, it must be. What is your take on the soundtrack for FF7?
Well, you know, my background is deeply engrossed in music. It was really good.
Great. We're gonna sloth Steve now. No, no. It's.
I will say that, and this is true. And you know, again, Final Fantasy 15 in the Broad Trip. you could choose. You could go buy CDs from the supermarkets, and you could choose which songs you were listening to, and those CDs were all soundtracks from previous Final Fantasy games.
Oh.
The only soundtracks that I played in the car, no joke, were Final Fantasy VII, because that is
it's the best one. Thank you.
Final Fantasy VII is it's iconic.
It's the best one. So in the game itself, there are some kind of iconic points in the game that I just kind of want to brush past, and then I want to talk a little bit. I want to spend maybe the last 10 minutes or so on the remake, because I haven't heard a lot about it. Well, no, it's a lie. I haven't played it. I've heard a lot about it. I've watched it, but I've not actually gotten my hands on it. I don't own a console for you, but I know Steve has.
Barrett's Lisp.
Barrett's Lisp?
Is that what we're talking about?
I don't know.
His Mike Tyson.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've only listened to
it.
I've only listened to it in Japanese. I've never listened to it in English. Does he have a lisp in English?
No, I'm talking about the dialogue for Barrett on Final Fantasy VII, how he spoke like "Alwai."
Oh yes,
AWWI.
Yeah. Oh yes, correct. Yes,
he
was Mike Tyson. It was a different time in the 90s in Japan. There was only one black guy that anyone knew out there at that time, and it was Mike Tyson. And
it's so bad.
It is bad. I didn't think about that.
It's so bad. No,
you're totally right. Like, I didn't catch it. It was just how Barrett was, but now all the lines are connected together, and it's a different time. That's all we have to say about that. But so there are these points in the game. There are points in the game that I want to talk about. So the very last fight of the game obviously is massive, but then there's Marketplace, there's Gold Saucer, and then there's things like Cosmo Canyon, like the mini game of like fighting up the ramp when like the things are coming and attacking you. There are the Chocobo. Thank you. That's the one I was looking for. There is the Chocobo, everything, the breeding, the racing, and everything about that. So what's the also in what is it? There's the motorcycle race in the very beginning to fight the first boss. There is the snowboard like mini game that you have, and the ice area.
There's the Moogle game.
The Moogle game.
5 and 3.
Pete's favorite.
Pete's favorite. 5 and 3.
5 Koopa nuts and then 3 Koopa nuts. We win every time.
I love it.
Pro tip: the roller coaster.
The roller coaster, yes. So
Yeah.
what was the big one for you guys? So for me, it was the Marketplace. Just that whole concept of like cross-dressing and everything like that, trying to sneak into this like sex mansion from Don Corneo, and like everyone just being the way it is, and you can actually get him to pick you if you get all of the parts on and everything like that. Going into like the brothel of the Honeybee Inn and everything like that. I didn't know what I was doing when I was playing it as a kid. Like it was just kind of like a weird
looking through the keyholes.
Yeah,
into the
just seeing the weirdest, most fucked up stuff in those keyholes. Like as I was an adult playing the game again, I love that section of the game because it's just so fun. But I remember as a kid, I don't really remember. I remember the squat in the gym, that area, and I remember like giving some dude some digestives so I can get like a wig, and that's about it. Like that's all I really remember it. But like I didn't realize that dude was bad because he was like super drunk and like had been drinking and like got bad food and now he has food poisoning. It was just like, oh, it's a sick guy. Like I never really put together what was going on. So for me, playing the Marketplace as a kid, playing it as an adult, and looking at what they did in a game in the 90s in Japan for that was really interesting to me. So the Marketplace is my like the part of the game that I think of most if I'm thinking about just overall Final Fantasy kind of side quest minigame stuff. But what about you, Steve? I'll go Pete. I'll go Pete first.
Okay,
Pete,
yeah. So Wall Market was great, but my favorite one that I put the most time in is when Cloud becomes a Shinra soldier and has to be in the parade.
Yes.
And
you got like 100% on that and stuff like that.
Both times, yeah. And they were, like,
too bad there weren't achievements back then.
Oh my god, yeah.
I loved that. Is you put it on and then you get to the ship. And
I
then
was
you even
so
see,
bad
like,
at that part. I got
Red
like
13
is
walking
max.
around and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you see like
good.
the soldier turns around and there's a tail and it's Red 13 walking on his hind legs. Yeah, it's oh my god, I forgot all about that. Totally. Shinra, the Shinra parade. Great point of the game as well. Great point of the game. Steve, what's yours?
I think the amount of time that you could put into stuff at the Gold Saucer. I mean, like the whole Chocobo breeding where you're looking for specific stats. I mean, it's like that's what eventually ended up in Pokemon, right? Like
You're
a couple
correct.
years later.
Yeah.
With what is it? I know all the Poke fans
The Ditto
are like
whore. You just get
super
a Ditto
into
and,
the
and breed it with
the
everything.
EVs and IVs and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right? But I
yeah.
mean, it's like you had to look for specific traits or classes on the chocobos. You had to breed them with other classes. You had to race them up to S rank, breed them with the correct chocobo of the opposite sex to get the color. And then, it's like the progression from the reds, the greens, the blacks, the blues, all that kind of stuff, to get the gold. And then it's with gold where the really, really good stuff in the game happened,
Knights of
right?
the
I mean,
Round,
you needed gold to get Knights of the Round.
Yep. I remember getting my first gold chocobo by finding a dude, like finding the guy that kind of tells you how to do it. He was like up in the mountains in this weird area, and it was just like,
Chocobo Sage,
I'm the Chocobo Sage. You should do all this shit. And it was like, oh, all right, I'll do that. And then we got the strategy guide. I was like, this, like it was amazing. But yeah, Knights of the Round took a long time to get. But what about did you guys ever get into the Emerald Weapon, Ruby Weapon fights at all? To make it quick for me, I had it set with like 4-cut times counter magic with paired with Knights of the Round, which I had mastered out so I could put it on all of my characters. And then like basically, if like Emerald Weapon like looked at me funny, I'd cast Knights of the Round 6 times on it, and then it was like, all right, it's your turn. And it was like the longest fight because Knights of the Round itself was like a 1.5-minute summon that you'd have to watch like 13 knights like pose, shift, and attack. Pose, shift, and attack 13 times, and I would do it 4 times, so it was a lot. It was
Quadra cast.
Yeah.
I think what was really interesting about the layout of the game and just is it was still in that phase where it was tough. I don't know if you guys had to do it. I literally had to completely restart my game at Hojo because I put Barrett in my party, who I hadn't been using frequently, to get his ultimate weapon.
Yep.
Went and triggered the scene where you fight Hojo, which I think auto-saved it, and could not beat him with my party. Same thing happened to me fighting, I got stuck in an infinite loop with Vincent because
I did that too with his fucking ultimate.
His limit
he
break.
heals the guy, the fire guy. Yeah, I was like, God
so
damn
it's like
it.
You hit, Vincent attacks and heals him for more than the damage that you had. And it's like, please kill Vincent. Please.
yes.
Please kill Vincent.
All the party's dead except for Vincent, and he's like, oh, for fuck's sake. Yes, that happened.
And an auto attack so you couldn't Phoenix down.
Yep.
There's also
the other thing that I put
too, climbing Yuffie's tower and having to fight 5 bosses with her.
I had to restart my game too.
You know what's funny with that? The first time I did that, I beat it.
The first time?
First time. And it wasn't until like the second and third times I played the game that I realized how difficult that was.
Yeah.
I just got so lucky.
Yeah. Oh man. For me,
to me, it was like, oh, it's no big deal. I was like,
no.
What, the tower? It's like, that was really easy.
It is not. It is totally not easy. But yeah.
You know what I got obsessed with doing? Because again, I'm a big collector. The enemy skill materia.
Oh yes. Yes, because you had to get that to get 4 times cut because it was a command skill and you had to get like I had to get all of the shit for all of the enemy skills, and that was rough.
But the big thing that I spent time doing was not like I went through and I eventually got all of the enemy skills, but I was such a stubborn asshole that I had to get I think it was Trine from the Midgar Zolom the first time I fought him. So I would replay that fight literally 150 times.
Beta. Yeah. It was beta. Yeah.
Beta, not Trine. Beta. Yeah. To get Beta from the Midgar Zolom. When you weren't supposed to beat him.
Yep. Oh, I remember that. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was such a rough.
It was basically like getting set up with the right materia and then like literally praying to God that he didn't cast the thing at the wrong time.
Yeah, or to the wrong person because it had to be on the wrong person that had the enemy skill materia on it. And he was like, for fuck's sakes. Yeah, totally.
But again, like going back to what you were talking about, look at in the last 10 minutes all of the different things you could focus on in this RPG.
Right. That's why it's so. This is more than just a story. There's a fantastic, on top of all these points, on all of these things that you could do, the gold saucer, which we haven't even talked about, all of the marketplace and everything, there's all these points of the game, and it's hard to define any other game like Final Fantasy VII. But let's push forward. Let's push forward because we are coming up towards 40 minutes, and I don't want to make this an hour-long podcast today.
Agreed.
But I want to talk about the remake. So Pete has watched 150 hours of the remake. I have watched about 10 hours of the remake from one of my buddies playing, but Steve has almost beaten it. So I want two questions, and then if you have any points on the remake that I want to hear from Steve. So one, how is it compared to going into it knowing, okay, Final Fantasy VII, we're going to remake it. How is it there? Is there anything that they've added? And I kind of know it's kind of a loaded question. I know there's like a whole bunch of like new things with like the Jesse storyline.
Yeah,
what else? What else have they added? And then what's your overall opinion of the remake? So those three questions.
So is that, you want me to start?
Yes, please. I can't really answer any of those.
So it is so cool, first of all, to see the high rendered 3D models of these characters and to see how they've adapted them into modern gaming. I think they portray the characters very well for what the game was at the time, and they brought it well into it. Like, I was really, really worried about some of the scenes because if you look at the dialogue in Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation 1, the PC, all that kind of stuff, it does not look like it would translate well into modern gaming because it was still primarily text-based adventure, But I think they did a really good job with establishing the story, establishing the characters, and not making you want to kill yourself or hate them. I like the portrayal of Cloud. I like the portrayal of Barrett. I like the relationship between Aeris and Tifa and Cloud. I think that comes across really well. I think that as Midgar still felt relatively open, even in Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation, because you had choices on where you would at least go back and forth.
Yep.
This very much to me feels strict rails.
Okay.
It's very straightforward in terms of its progression, and you're just running from map to map to map. There is significantly less focus on combat. Like, you can't just go grind and level up because when you kill guys, it's hard for them to appear. So it feels different in that regard. But it's breathtaking to see some of the things. I mean, the wall market scene, the cross-dressing is still there.
Yeah, that's what I'm happy with. With the climate of everything going on today, I was very worried that they would take things like the wall market that's because that's as we just talked about, that's my part of the game that I enjoy the most. I think it's the most interesting, the most enjoyable. Like, I think it's just such a cool thing. And if they had messed around with it and changed it too much, it would have been like, man, there's just like, it's not Final Fantasy VII anymore for me. So yeah. I think that they did a good job holding to the big key bullet points that happened in the game itself. From what I've watched, I'm happy they've done that. But I think, is there a big change that you've noticed? I know there's more mini games like
there. So I don't want to
stuff like that.
I don't want to spoil for people who haven't played, but for those who know, I think everyone pretty much knows that the game only goes through Midgar.
Yep.
So, once you escape from Shinra, the game is over. They added in a lot of like side quests and little things that aren't really that great. I mean, it's filler to make it into a full game.
Yep.
But they leave things relatively open at the end of the first of this chapter that things could remain the same with respect to the story, or things could change. And I'm not going to say more, but it's an interesting direction because the future releases could be basically rehashes of the original, or it could be significantly different.
That would be interesting. I think so. For me, remake is, there's two types of remake, right? There's just a carbon copy, just updated graphics, which I think wouldn't do justice to to Final Fantasy VII, because it's still a good game. I can still play Final Fantasy VII on my PSP and enjoy it just as well as I did before. So why would you want just a better graphics version of that? That's kind of, there's a hard line in the sand from some people out there that just wanted that updated version of it just to play again. But I was, personally, for me, I was a little upset when it didn't go to the end of at least the first original Final Fantasy VII. I would have liked it to not have been just this first chapter, because let's be honest, like it's going to turn into like a Mass Effect if it's that long, if it's going to be 3 chapters, right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, Mass Effect is cool. It's a great game series, but like, if I just want to play Final Fantasy VII, yeah, I don't want to spend 300 hours just trying to get through the story. I want to spend 300 hours and be totally finished. Like, I've done everything you can possibly do in this game. And now it's like, okay, $300 is going to get you started. And it's like, I have a job. Like, you know, I don't have that much time anymore.
And as good as the Midgar section of the story is, it doesn't get really interesting until mid to late game, once you start realizing how everything fits together.
Stuff, yeah, all of that stuff happens after Midgar when you're outside and in it. So that's why there is a newer what is it? A next chapter coming, correct?
Yeah, I mean it's in development and it should take a lot quicker than the first one.
Okay, I understand. So 2035.
yeah, maybe. 34.
Yeah, 34. We'll give him a year. But Pete, what's your take about the remaster? Honestly, I don't really have a lot of opinions besides the one I just said about I wish it had gone to the end, and I understand if it's not a carbon copy, but you've watched a lot more of it. So what do you think?
So I kind of sit in the same ballpark with Steve. You know, being able to hear the characters, see the 3D model, see the interaction, it felt like visiting old friends.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting, though, is a lot of the voice cast is different than Advent Children, which was the first time I had seen these characters voiced.
That's true. I forgot about Advent Children.
When they had come back, Katase was like, let's give this whole thing a refresh, which I love the voice cast of the remake. I think they got everyone pretty well dialed in as far as that goes. So for me, I think remake, if you want like a polished Final Fantasy VII, it's awesome. But Katase also said there's a big difference between a remaster and a remake. And he's like, this is a remake. And so, you know, we took the things that you like and we're going to keep working on those, but it very much will, like, it might hit major points and it might not. And I think we got to see that with it being a full Midgard game. So I'm kind of in the same boat. I had wished it gone a little further. They could have definitely cut some fat away.
It was unnecessarily long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the issue that I'm having. It's becoming like The Hobbit, is what I'm afraid of, right? I don't want something like that to happen to Final Fantasy VII. I don't want it to become The Hobbit, and that's my fear.
Yeah.
But I haven't played it. I'm waiting a little bit longer for it to see where it's going, and then I'll make my decision if I want to spend the money on it or not.
But without The Hobbit, we would not have Kingsfoil Pig.
This is true. We need to get Kingsfoil Pig in the next. We need to have a Kingsfoil Pig. Oh my God.
Hashtag make Kingsfoil Pig great again.
Great again.
Great again. All right, so I think we're coming up. We're at the 45 or the 48 minute mark, which is a little bit longer than we usually do. We're about 10 minutes over, but I want to do the end of it. Yeah, so again, it's bound to happen on a game like Final Fantasy because we could talk, I think, for 40 minutes about just one of the actual little individual subsections that we talked about today. So I think we've done a good job. I really tried to make this as streamlined and as like not just wild as I could, and try to rail it as much as maybe Final Fantasy 13, or 15. But let's finish out here on the rating system. So today, I want to start with Pete, and I want to understand what's your rating of Final Fantasy VII, the original, not the remake. This is about the original FF7 for PlayStation release, and we're going to rate it out of 5 Buster Swords. How many would you give it, and why?
So taking everything into consideration, it's a really easy 5 out of 5 Buster Swords. Again, it's a game that I grew up playing. Like the first time I put my hands on it, I was probably 9 years old, and I literally sat and played it on my PSP yesterday.
Yeah.
And so it's something where I want to revisit it. It's the music, it's the story, it's the characters, it's everything. It's something that imprinted on me to where when I play games like Soul Calibur and there's a custom character, I'm like, I'm gonna make Cloud because he's the best character.
Yeah.
And just seeing how big the legacy was, where like he's a character in Smash, he's a character in Tactics, like you see these characters, like it was so well written that it deserves a place at like 5 out of 5, and it has just imprinted itself in so many other things too.
100%. I agree with you. Steve, what's your rating out of 5 Buster Swords?
Yeah, I would say 5. Final Fantasy VII, in terms of RPGs, is the RPG I've played most out of any other one. I probably about once a year to once every 18 months, we'll put it back in some device. I own it and have owned it on any device that will play it.
Yep.
And I've even even before it was out on PSP, I illegally ported it onto my PlayStation on my PSP before they officially released it. So it's
There
like,
it
yeah, 5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. Me too. This is easy. Oh, and again, all things considered, as Pete said, 5 out of 5. There has been no game that I play more, I have played more, and that I will continue to play more than this. Maybe this and Ocarina of Time are the two that I will put back into a system and play every year. And it's just the game, and again, the benchmark that I have for all RPGs and just Final Fantasy as a genre itself. I've not really played much after this. I played 8 after I played 7, and it was fun, but it wasn't 7, so I was like, you know what, let's try to end on a high note. And I basically stopped at 7. Pete has gone on and played a bunch more. There's some good ones out there that I might try in the future, but I have everything I need right here with FF7. So, anything else? You guys good?
Parting question.
Go ahead.
Who does Cloud belong with, Tifa or Aeris?
Tifa. I'll die on that hill.
Yeah,
I'll die on that hill.
I'm Team Tifa.
Same, Team Tifa.
Oh, I almost slapped me again. All right, good. All right. In the chat, let me know. I don't want to hear about how you say her name. I'm right, you're wrong if it's not Aeris. But if you think that Cloud belongs with Tifa or Aeris, tell me in the chat. I will appease that whatever your opinion about that. So, without further ado, guys, I'm going to start up the Spanish Flea, and we are going to throw...
Oh, next time
on Mom's Basement, we're going to walk away from games, and we're going to talk about the movie The Predator. Next time on Mom's Basement. See you in the next one, guys.